now we'll move on to speaking about the tafsir course which we're launching next year. So let's start talking about the tafsir course that we have proposed. This one is going to be over 2 days. It's going to be a Thursday-Friday program, right? Thursday-Friday program, about 8 to 9 hours over those 2 days. So one day will be 3 to 4 hours. The other day is going to be 3 hours. And what we're going to cover in this, I've not seen another tafsir course out there, and it's actually something that is a lot in demand, because tafsir is something that is just so mainstream. It's something that everybody can have access to, and it's something that everybody should have access to. When we say tafsir course, I don't want to reduce this to just talking about tafasir. It's actually a Qur'an and tafsir course. So it's related to everything about the Qur'an, both understanding the meaning of the Qur'an and the tafsir. The tafsir is essentially just a utility and a tool to understand the Qur'an. So there's numerous other subjects related to the Qur'an that we're going to try to deal with. So again, the proposal here is to spend about 2 hours a week out of those 2 days dealing with probably between, I would say, maybe 20 to 30 tafsirs we aim to cover during the year. So we're going to start from the earliest tafsirs. First, study the manhaj. There's numerous books that have been written on the methodologies and the style and their focus of the various different mufassirun. All the way starting from, if you start Ibn Abbas or go down to the first compiled one is probably the one that's published everybody has, is Tabari. And you go down Ibn Kathir, and you have Alusi, and you have Qurtubi, and you have Tafsir al-Khazin, and you have numerous ones, and then you've got the modern ones. So the whole idea is to first study what's the unique features and the style of this mufassir, and then after that to take selected passages of that tafsir, because you're not going to be able to do the whole tafsir, but to take a surah or a cluster of verses and then actually read that tafsir and then look at his style. So for example, if it's Tafsir al-Razi, then we're probably going to take a selection on Aqidah, on theology, because that's what he's really good at, right? Qurtubi, mashallah, we'll have to see what a representative sample of that is, because he sometimes under just one or two verses, he'll have about 20 different abhath on various different subjects, and then Alusi and so on. So that's going to be kind of very interesting, because you'll get a good coverage and a scope and a review of at least the main tafsirs and some of the more obscure tafsirs, so that in the future when you want to study a verse or you want to teach a lesson on tafsir or give a dars of Qur'an in the masjid, you know exactly which tafsir to go to, because you would have dealt with them. You'd never think that, hey, these tafsirs, man, they're beyond me. So it's just trying to equip us to get into reading various different tafasir. The second, another hour will be a critical assessment of modern tafasir, because to be honest, there's been what people would say inhiraf fit tafasir in contemporary times. In the most recent times, there's been a lot of inhiraf in tafsir. So a lot of the modern tafsirs, they're not based on the classical literature. These were a lot of more tadabbur al-Qur'an, just contemporary understanding. In fact, what one assessment shows is that a number of the tafsirs that have been written recently, they were not necessarily even written by scholars, people who had a background in hadith and aqidah, and these were people who were good thinkers, good Arabists, right? Adibs, maybe, literature scholars, right? Thinkers, philosophers even. And then because the Qur'an is open to all, they produce the tafsir. Some have probably produced some really, some good points in there. But then this is also because it's not necessarily backed by full aqidah understanding or academic understanding of aqidah and hadith and so on. Sometimes, they could fall into what you would call deviation from the manhaj that has been understood. So a critical assessment of modern tafsirs. Then the next, another topic that's going to be covered in there is the whole concept of balagha and i'jazul Qur'an and fahmul Qur'an. So i'jazul Qur'an, the style, language and structure of the Qur'an. That's an amazing, I mean, I remember when I did that at SOAS with Professor Abdul Halim, that was just amazing. It just gives you this new dimension to look at the Quran from. It's quite amazing. Then there's the Western criticism of the Quran, from over 100, 200 years ago until contemporary times. Numerous orientalists have criticized the Quran on various different themes in the Quran, various different ways. So it's trying to understand what they've written and how do we respond to that. Because if you're a scholar, you're going to receive questions about various different criticisms, because these criticisms, when they come out, then they proliferate and people pick them up. And even if you think that they've all been dealt with, they are unearthed somewhere and they'll come back to haunt you. Right? So, Fahmul Quran, Western criticism of the Quran, responses to that, language, style and structure, i'jaz, balagha, critical assessment of modern tafsir and tafsir selections itself, and ulum al-Qur'an. So ulum al-Qur'an will be studied from various different books. And again, we're not going to study just one book. The idea is that Mawlana Zishan, he will be providing various different... I'm going to let him speak a bit more about that anyway.
Right, so the only thing that's left is Ulum al-Qur'an. Just a brief point before, because some people are calling this course, we didn't say, but they're saying it takhassus fi tafsir, meaning a takhassus requires a student to actually have studied the topic at a reasonable level and then do takhassus. So we're going to be starting right from the beginning and going quite deep, because in madrasa, most madrasas, there'll be exemptions, I'm sure there are in certain madrasa, but the level that's normally studied at is in Ulum al-Qur'an. If you're lucky, you may get a Fawzu Kabir. In terms of tafsir, if anything, you have Quran translation and then you have Jalalain. And Jalalain is, it's like an Arabic translation in Arabic. So you want to have much in terms of tafsir. So beyond that, to say I'm moving on to a takhassus, it wouldn't really make sense, right? So that's an important clarification. But that being said, Ulum al-Qur'an, the idea is we're still developing the course as it goes on. So we will see how this course goes, and then we will make amendments depending on, because it's not been done before, so we don't have a blueprint that we're following. So the idea of Ulum al-Qur'an is to have one base text, which is quite inclusive. It covers the main topics, and then in certain chapters to deviate away from the text and to go into maybe more classical works. So for example, the base text that we have right now we're looking at is Sheikh Abdullah Judayd's al-Muqaddimat al-Asasiyya fi Ulum al-Qur'an, which is a large book. It's about 500-600 pages, but it's quite basic in terms of its Arabic, its structure, and the way it discusses things is quite in a quite simplistic way. So the idea would be read that as a base text, but then as chapters come, so you do nasikh, mansukh, or you're doing ahruf, for example, you're discussing ahruf, you can move into al-Itqan, so the discussion of Suyuti, because Itqan Suyuti has multiple views. But then when you're doing Itqan of Suyuti, let's say on the issue of ahruf, there's so much written in there, it's difficult to try to even work out what's correct, what isn't, because he literally does jump of everything. So then the idea is that the teacher is teaching the book, and the students as well, because the idea of how I structure my lessons here, because it's advanced, it's not me seen as a teacher coming here and telling you what's right or wrong or dictating to you. It's because everyone's qualified, it's for us to sit together and then go through text together. So everyone has an input, an idea, and I have my views, an idea, and then we try to develop our views together rather than me being an expert and coming and telling you what's what. So that's the basic idea of Ulum al-Qur'an. Then from there, certain topics are going to be taken out. So one of the Mufti said was response to the Mustashriqun. Now, one of the major critiques of the Quran by the Orientalists is on the origins, right? So Mufti mentioned before on the idea of Sahih Bukhari. So people are questioning Bukhari, we're not talking about questioning of Bukhari to the Prophet ﷺ. The questioning is of us to Imam Bukhari, right? And where does this questioning come from? Is the idea of oral transmission and manuscripts, nuskhas, right? Having a manuscript on sources and how knowledge is transmitted. It's such an important part of our knowledge, and such an important aspect of knowledge it is, which we don't have a separate lesson for, right? That we learn this. So it's the whole idea is to pick out those topics which are not covered, and then we try our best here to try to cover that and provide sources for students to read and to take on for later. So that's the basic idea.
So if we move over